Hi, this is James Warda, and welcome to another episode of Coincidental Conversations, where we explore, obviously, coincidences and how they tend to connect us to people, places, and times. And today we've got I always say this is a special episode, but it really is a special episode. I can't help it. Lou Mongello is many things, and this is one of those times where I have to refer to my notes. Former attorney and owner of an IT consulting company, then became an author, speaker, consultant, workshop facilitator focused on Disney, made a move to Orlando, host and producer of the WDW Radio Disney podcast, voted best travel podcast by Podcast Awards for 9 years and running. And he manages the Dream Team Project charitable group, raises money for children with serious illnesses to visit Disney World, which is very powerful. To date, they have made more than $450,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation of America to help children do that. So with all that, I'd like to welcome Lou. Lou, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
James, thanks so much for the invitation.
And, right off the bat, I got to say that your background is a heck of a lot more interesting than mine. So after this, I'm going to run out to Hobby Lobby and go on Disney.com. And I got to add stuff quickly.
This is actually a pared down version of what it was. It was just getting to the point where the word hoarder was starting to come into the vocabulary.
I consider that an enthusiast. So on post-production, I'm going to add in a bunch of stuff back here. So that'll be cool. To get us started, I wanted to as we just talked about in that intro, former attorney, owner of an IT consulting company. I know there's a lot of other things too in the background. And then one day you decided, you know what? Disney, right? So, I have a similar background. So I'm really interested to ask you, did you wake up at night and go, aha, or how did that kind of happen?
I guess it was a gradual aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I was always in the service business, practicing law and with the IT consulting company. And I think literally, I think I watched way too many infomercials late at night. And I said, I've always been in the service business. I want to try and make something once and resell it. The idea of a book came to be, and I just set out on a personal challenge to see if I could write a book and get it published. Again, this is early 2003. And all I really knew about was Disney World, right? I've been going since November of 71. I've been fascinated by this place. And I really set out to write the book that I wanted to read, which was a trivia book. I love the details, the minutia, and the secrets and stories. And I learned everything I could about the book publishing industry and sent out 47 query letters to publishers. Here's the takeaway lesson. I got all you need is one yes. Wrote a book, thought that was going to be it, but the book turned into a website. It turned into a community that I didn't even realize was out there because it was pre-social media. Started podcasting in 2005, just literally, a couple of months after the medium was introduced. And at some point I decided to take the leap of faith and I left my job and then eventually moved to Florida to give whatever this thing was going to be a shot.
That's excellent. And you used a term there, fascinated. You said you were fascinated with Disney since going to Disney World in 71. I know it's hard to put into words, but what was that fascination? What drew you to it?
The same thing that draws me to it now. And that's not a line. It's real because I came from and still have a very close family, but there was something, and there remains something special about this place. And if you're a Disney fan, I think you understand it. If you're not, you think I'm a Looney Tune. But when you walk into the gates of Magic Kingdom, there's something transformative that happens and you forget about everything that's going on in the real world. And some of the best times I had with my family was at Disney World. And I was fascinated from an early age wondering what was it about this place that kept drawing us back year after year after year. I read everything I possibly could. I still have my first book from 1971 that I read in the back of the station wagon driving back and forth from New Jersey, because I was like, what is it that keeps bringing us back? And that fascination continued to grow even as I became a teenager and then an adult.
I just love that you said station wagon, for some of our younger viewers out there might be wondering what that is. And basically, to our viewers, a station wagon, if you take a minivan and you like smash it down and you pull it, think rock and roller coaster, something like that. But
right, and then turn the back seats the opposite way and remove all the seatbelts.
Right. Yeah. I don't know how we made it,
How did we survive? I have no idea.
That's awesome. And we talked briefly before about this, but in terms of your roles, again, if someone were just saying, lawyer, IT consulting, Disney, right? Podcasts, et cetera. Is there something that ties those roles together for you?
Hindsight really is 2020, because I used to ask myself that same question, right? This has been a very circuitous route getting from point A to whatever point I'm in now, because I don't think I'm in point Z yet. And I realized that it always comes down to a desire to help people. So when I practiced law, I was in a plaintiff's firm with my dad because we wanted to help people, right? That was the point of whether they were, got into a car accident or buying a house or whatever it might be. And then the same thing with the IT consulting. I was a nerd growing up. I still am a nerd growing up. But I had a computer from an early age, and I taught myself and didn't go out very much. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, as networking and web design started to become part of what small businesses were looking for, I wanted to fill that gap between a company that couldn't afford to have an in-house IT person and didn't want to juggle trying to build a site and network. So I'd be in court in the morning in my suit. I'd get a phone call. I'd have to run to a networking client, literally laying on the floor in sawdust, like pulling network cable, go back to my office, see clients till 6 o'clock, go home, inhale my dinner, and then do web development till 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was just sort of my everyday, which I loved, but it did come down to a desire to help, whether it was, they needed help from an attorney, they needed help to optimize their business, and then eventually if they needed help sort of planning a better Walt Disney World vacation.
I'm guessing that technology background has helped you obviously in your business and what you do now, right? Just understanding all of it. So just another question that just kind of came up is, okay, so you had your aha moment, a gradual aha moment, and you've made this decision. I'm just wondering how that flew with the family. It's like, if you don't want to go there, that's fine. I'm thinking about myself going, I want to go write about Disney and stuff. Was that, how did that go?
Look, I don't tell her I said this, but she knows her. I wouldn't be here without the support of my wife and my immediate family, right? I worked for my dad. I said, Dad, I'm thinking about leaving and I want to start my IT consulting company. He said, that's fine. You always have a place to come back to. I tell my wife, I'm like, look, I'm going to be buried in the basement working on websites. I wrote my book usually at night from 10 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning when it was nice and quiet. And when I literally remember, James, the time that I walked upstairs, I said, I'm really thinking that if I want to give this thing a go, I need to be where what I do is. I said, I think we should move to Orlando. And the word yes didn't finish coming out of her mouth before I ran downstairs and started packing. She and my parents, when they were alive, were incredibly supportive. I did get some pushback from friends at that time who thought I was crazy and literally said, you'll be back here in 6 months. It is critical to surround yourself by people that believe in the vision and believe in the dream. And I have been very blessed to have a very supportive family, both immediate and extended.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's really cool. And then the other thing that came up as you were talking was, my gosh, this guy has energy. This guy has, have you always had, when you were a kid? Because you must have been quite a kid to be around, but did you always have that energy?
I didn't. I think I'm an extroverted introvert. Although what I do now is I talk for a living, and we put ourselves out there publicly for a living. I was very, very shy as a kid, and the energy, honestly, and I know this sounds like, you know, nonsensical marketing speak, but it comes from the fact that I freaking love what I do.
Mhm.
Like, it is the thing that gets me up early in the morning. It keeps me up late at night. Like, there's times I hate weekends because I'm like, I can't get somebody on the phone because I'm too, but I do. And James, honestly, the day that this stops being fun for me is the day that I stop doing it. Because don't tell anybody, but this doesn't feel like a job. It's work, and I work longer and harder than I ever have before. Yes, even while I was practicing law. Sorry, Dad. But it doesn't feel like work because I just genuinely love it. And it's the thing that fuels my fire.
Well, and I know, and to the viewers out there, that isn't marketing speak, because I have, I follow what Lou does, and Lou, I followed kind of your recent trip out to California, and just the posts and it comes through, right? That love for what you do comes through, that passion, and I truly believe people like being around passionate people. They get something out of that. So,
And I think positivity is contagious. I think the same way that negativity is cancerous, I think
yep.
positivity is contagious. And one of the things that I love about podcasting, and especially live video, which I've been doing since 2007, is that you can't fake it, right? Anybody could write a blog post about, their love of cupcakes or whatever it might be, because you can't hear it, right? You can't hear it in their voice. You can't see it on their face. You can't fake it in these mediums. And I love the fact, and I hate the fact that authenticity has become this sort of buzzword, because we should be authentic all the time. But the transparency that podcasting and live video afford you as a viewer and require of you as the content creator, to me, is the most important thing.
That's really well put, and especially nowadays, I think the world needs all of that a lot more. So we'll leave it at that. So we talked about what fascinates you about Disney. It's funny. I was doing a post this morning about Walt. I was writing about him, and I not only it started with where there's a will, there's a Walt, because not only is it his vision, right, but his will, right? And just I'm reading. This is not a plug. It's not my book. And Lou, if you haven't read this, it is truly an amazing book. I don't know if readers can see this. It's called Disney's Land by Richard Snow. It's excellent, really excellent chronicle. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that it talks about everything he faced that at any point could have meant he wouldn't have created Disneyland and wouldn't have created Disney World. So, so Walt resonates with me. I'm going to assume it, but I wanted to ask you, do you feel some connection with Walt Disney?
Without a doubt. And I've never read that book, but I will add it to my list, because as an entrepreneur, I think that Walt Disney is the spokesmodel for entrepreneurism, not because of his successes, but because of the challenges and failures that he faced along the way. He was not born into anything. He was not born, literally not born into anything. He came from a very difficult upbringing as a child. He had, he's gone bankrupt. He had his animators left. He had work stolen from him. He's faced all these challenges over and over and over again. And, there was always another mountain to climb for Walt throughout his entire career. And I think there are a lot of lessons, and I speak about this a lot in terms of lessons that we can learn, not just from the Disney company, but from Walt specifically, that I think you can apply to whether you are a middle schooler, you're in college, or you are an entrepreneur, because he literally did that. He literally walked that walk in terms of facing the difficulties that I think challenge us as entrepreneurs every day.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife. I'm blessed to have a wife too, who not only, encourages this, but also is just as crazy about Disney as I am. But we were talking, and I said, it's interesting and some people might, it might take a minute for somebody to, they might even push back on this. I'm not sure, but I said, Main Street came from lack. Main Street at Disney World, at Magic Kingdom, at Disneyland, as we talked about, Walt didn't have an easy childhood. All right. I mean, there's stories of him delivering papers at 3 a.m. in snowstorms, and, he had a rough childhood. So Main Street was his fantasy of, of his childhood home and childhood, so it actually came from a place of what he most wanted in life. And then that somehow draws us to go there, and it just kind of occurred to me, and how it really becomes home for so many. I'm going to guess that you have pictures of Disney World, you with the family at Disney World around the house.
I do, and I have a picture actually from that first visit in November of '71, where I listen, I loved my mother to death, but man, my outfit and my haircut was not all that awesome. But there I was, with my curly hair and 70s clothes, sitting there on Main Street. And for years, it was a picture that I would go and recreate by myself with friends. And then, of course, when I had kids, I had to plop them there in that same spot.
And do you think your kids, do they get it? Why Disney means so much to their dad?
They do, and I'm very blessed because of the age and the participation that I've brought my kids into in terms of this entire journey. Don't tell them this, but I don't sit them down and say, well, this is the lesson that I want you to learn. I want them to learn by observing and see that you can and you should take that thing that you love and turn it into what you do. They've got the blessing too of tools and opportunity that maybe we didn't know even existed or have as kids. I want them to see that it doesn't matter where you are in life, that you can pivot. If you start going down one road, I didn't change directions until I was, later in life, until I was, 40 plus and made that 180-degree shift and went in a very different direction. I want them to see the importance of absolutely loving what you do, and that the why you do something is critical. It's not about money. I never set out to make any money doing this. That was never, as an author, I can tell you, you don't make a lot of money selling books, but that wasn't the reason, right? The why has to be important. And going back to your question, that's the thing that is going to keep that fire burning and that fuel going, especially when, as an entrepreneur, we very much, our lives and our journeys are oftentimes like sine waves.
And personally, I've made $15 million off my book, but I don't know. That in my dreams, but it's so you do a lot of stuff. How do you not spread yourself too thin? Like you're doing this with me today. How do you do it all?
You make the time, right? You make the time. I will tell you this, the honest answer is you have to learn what you need and want to sacrifice. This journey didn't happen without different levels of sacrifice. Along the way, there was time I sacrificed with my family. There were opportunities that I sacrificed to pursue this thing. And even on a much more micro scale, during the week, look, I'd love to sit down and binge watch. I can't even say Game of Thrones because I've never even seen Game of Thrones because I don't have time to watch it. But those are some of the sacrifices you have to make in order to pursue whatever that dream, that goal, that vision is. And that is not a complaint. It is not, I unapologetically do that because it's worth it.
Well, and again, I was saying that I've followed what you do. I've done some studied up on what you do. And I'm wondering, did you get a sense, because I've seen how people react to you, online and they seem drawn to you. Do you know what they're drawn to? Do you get a sense of, and now I know it's hard to talk about yourself in this way. I get that, but maybe you can just tell me, what do they tell you it is about what you do that resonates? Because I've got a theory, but I just wanted to ask you first.
I am now incredibly fascinated to hear your theory because I don't know. And look, I will be very forthcoming with you, James, and tell you, and this is not, any secret, growing up, I did not have a lot of friends. I was not the popular kid in school. You may or may not be able to tell this is not the body of an athlete. So I was not into, sports and things like that. So it's very odd and humbling and so many other emotions go through my head when somebody comes up to you and says, because of you, I did this. Because of you, this happened. Or, part of the reasons why I do monthly meetups in the parks is not so people can come meet me. It's so I can meet them and so they can meet each other. But when somebody looks you in the eye and starts crying and says, your podcast did this, or this episode or something you said did this, it's no amount of money can ever top that feeling. And I say this to people all the time, whether you're a podcaster, video creator, whatever it might be, you never know who's listening. And I don't mean that as a warning. I mean that as a gift, because you don't know how what you do may positively affect somebody. Look, I'm a very positive person. It's just who I am. But at the end of the day, look, I talk about, my friends used to make fun of me because all I did was talk about Mickey Mouse, but it's what I do. But I do a very positive show, and I talk about the things that make us happy about coming to this place, because again, it's who I am. I want the show to be an escape and a distraction. Never, ever thinking that somebody might listen and it might not just impact, the hour that they're spending listening, but might impact on a great level. And pretend I'm not talking about myself, because this makes me very, very uncomfortable.
Yep.
I say this as a lesson to others, that whatever it is that you're doing or talk about, however silly or ridiculous you might think it might be, you don't know who's listening, and you don't know the positive impact you might have on somebody. And that, I believe, James, has this wonderful ripple effect that hopefully pays itself forward.
Well, first of all, thank you for answering that. I know it's kind of an uncomfortable question. Secondly, I forced you to answer it, so you did it under duress. So you can always say that. And now I'll give you my theory. It's a little long, but I think it's important. I think I might have shared this with you, but we were visiting our son in Orlando, and he's an aerospace engineer, and so he's a huge Disney fan. So he looks at the rides and the attractions from all different perspectives. So he told me, Dad, you got to come down here. There's 2 new rides, Rise of the Resistance and Flight of Passage. So, getting on Rise of the Resistance can be like, getting in to see the Beatles, for those who did that. But so I got on Flight of Passage with my son. I'm 57. He's next to me. I sit down, put the goggles on, you sit in this machine that makes it feel like you're flying on this large bird in Pandora. The screen goes up and I start flying. And I can even feel it happening now. This is the power of Disney. And I'm flying and I start to cry a little bit. And I'm going, what the heck is going on?
I get it, man. I do.
Right? And I'm going, okay, don't let your son see you. And I can't wipe my eyes because there's, the goggles. So it's like, and as I just kind of, just as we do as, writers and speakers, and I started to go, what is happening here? Right? Because I realized later what I was feeling was an adult sense of wonder. And I'm like, well, when do adults get to feel wonder? As kids you do, but as adults, it's much more rare. So I got off that ride and I started saying, well, how does Disney do that? And how do the Imagineers do that? The Walt Disney Imagineering Group. So I started talking with some Imagineers, but so I'm getting back to answering your question of why I think it is that people resonate with you. Here's my theory. Walt Disney did what he did for the love of what he did. My opinion, and I've seen it in a lot of different books and research, he didn't really do it for the money. The only reason he wanted to make money, right, was so he could keep doing what he was doing. And he had his brother to worry about the money. And that's that passion. And I think others who are sincere and have that passion somehow connect with that vision, and others are drawn to it. So I actually think people are drawn to you because you're sincere. Like what you just shared, that's a sincere, vulnerable thing. And they're also drawn through you to Disney's kind of original vision and energy and passion. And you become kind of like a Main Street, but not at the Kingdom. So that's my theory.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I do agree. Again, not talking about myself specifically, but I do believe. I think, James, that we're magnets for the kind of people that we want to attract, right? And you know me, I'm a big proponent of community, and that again is not a buzzword; it's a real thing. It has been the most important part of what I do. Everything that you've talked about that I have been fortunate to do and experience and share with others has happened not because of me, but because of the community that has grown around what I get to do, right? I wouldn't be here if nobody listened. I wouldn't be here if nobody, joined the running team and donated to the dream team and came to events and things like that. And that doesn't come from marketing. Again, being fully transparent, I have never spent a dime on marketing ever. Other than just sort of testing Facebook to see just like how it works. I've never placed an ad. I have never run an ad. I don't have a marketing funnel. I don't have a sequence. I don't have any of those things, because the people who I want to be part of the community, wherever it lives, whether it be on Facebook or elsewhere, I want them to be there for the right reason. I want them to be there because they listen and say, I like him. I get it, right? This is the kind of community I want to be in. Or they say to their friends, hey, I really think that you'll like it here. I think you'll like the kind of content that's being put out. And I say this all the time because it's true. I may have just built the clubhouse, but it's the people who are there that populate it. And again, forget about, I'm as happy and as proud as I am for not having spent money. I'm more proud of the fact that, especially now in 2021, I have no moderators in our Facebook group because we don't need them, because it's a self-moderating, self-policing group, because the people who are there want to be there and came in for the right reasons.
That is, for anybody who really understands social media out there, that's huge, right? To get a community to the point where it's self-moderating, that's when you've reached that pinnacle, because those are your. I've heard you described. I've seen you described as a super fan. And so I looked it up. I'm like, wow, how do you get a cape, or and
you get all this stuff when you become a super ring and all this stuff behind you.
I gotta get one of those. How do you become a super fan? But I think that's kind of what you're describing, where your community members, they're an extension of you, and they self-police. So I think that's cool. When I shared that story of being on the Flight of Passage, I sensed kind of a similar, that you might have felt similar things. And not asking you to divulge too much, but have you had those kinds of experiences with Disney?
Listen, James, I think that we're far enough along in our relationship that I can tell you the same thing happened to me. And look, that's the thing about Disney, right? It's not the highest, fastest, longest, whatever roller coaster. It's the way that this place makes us feel, the way the movies make us feel, the way the things we experience makes us feel. It's one thing for me to go and cry when I see the Millennium Falcon for the first time, thinking back to watching Star Wars with my dad in 1977. It's different when I ride Flight of Passage and I am wiping tears away from my face because I have no emotional connection to that film at all. I can't tell. I know the Sigourney Weaver and that other guy is in it. I can't even tell you the name of a single character, but the way that attraction made me feel, I was flying. I had this sensation that I had never felt before. That's the Disney difference, right? It's the exceeding of expectations and pulling out those emotions from you that, you sometimes didn't realize you have. Look, I'll go back to a very quick story. I loved when rope drop used to happen in Magic Kingdom outside the train station, which I think will come back again eventually. Everybody would sit there and face the train station. I would stand in the front and I would turn around and I would face the other way because I wanted to watch the reactions of the people who were there. And I loved seeing, and I look forward to seeing again because it still happens, these big, tough dudes, tattoos and whatever, like scruff. And they're sitting there and they're holding their little girl or the little boy and they're weeping because they're standing in front and they see their reaction. Like, you know, nowhere else does that happen than Disney.
Wow. And it's funny because after coming back from that trip, I thought, well, okay, do I keep that to myself? And being probably like you, I'm an extroverted introvert, but I also realized, okay, I have to share that, right? I have to write about it because that's what we do. And I did, and literally over 70 comments from men and women, all saying they felt the same way. I recently interviewed on this series Jim Scholl, who is a former Imagineer, who worked on the design or designed Rock and Roller Coaster. He said he went on that ride, he had the same feeling. And so it just keeps striking me, how does Disney do that, now you do, obviously you do the podcasting, but you also do consulting and you do workshops, right? And when you're doing your workshops, are your workshops with other people looking to start businesses? Are they with established companies? Who's attending your workshops?
So it's a little bit of all of the above. As I started going down this path early on, I would attend and still do attend conferences whenever I could because I'm just a sponge, right? I wanted to learn as much as I could. After going for a few years, I'd start to meet people and I would explain to them my story. And somebody said, "You need to get up there and tell your story too," never expecting to be a speaker. And then eventually I started speaking and then started speaking professionally to not just to conferences, but to corporate events and things like that, whether it was about the pursuit of passion, leadership lessons we can learn from Walt Disney, exceptional customer service lessons we can learn from the Disney parks, or even just practical things about content creation, podcasting, live video.
Mm-hmm.
In doing that too, I also sometimes would get and continue to get emails or meet people who say, can you, I've got this idea, I've got this thing, I'm trying to move the needle, I'm trying to turn this thing that I love into this thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who, like I said, in hindsight, wants to help people, I decided 5 years ago to start my own very small unconference, really, sort of more of a workshop, and work with people individually to help them do that, right? To help them do the same thing that I'm doing, not specifically, but in terms of taking that thing that they are passionate about and letting it become something that they do full time, because I think life is too short not to do what you love every day.
And hallelujah. Do you find in those workshops, because I can see teaching people kind of the process, right? And setting up your business, doing a business plan, that type of thing. But I would think one of the biggest things is how do you help prepare people for the rejection? The 47 rejections to have them keep going when people are saying, why would you move to Orlando? You're an attorney, is that a part of the workshop, and how do you prepare them for that?
Very much so. And by design. So I do a conference every year in Walt Disney World. I do also a smaller retreat, but my workshop is limited to 50 people. And it always has been, and it probably always will be, because having attended conferences before and sitting there trying to decide which session do I go to, who do I, and even if you do decide where to go and you're taking all these notes and you leave excited, I'm not kidding you. I didn't know you were going to ask me this. I literally still have on my desk this notebook that I've carried with me for years that has notes from a conference that I went to. It's probably coming on 10 years ago. And I left and I was all excited. I'm like, oh, I'm going to implement all these things. And I came home and I put the notebook down, and then life got in the way. And all the things I was excited about, I never actually was able to implement. I was like, I want to do something different. I want to have a single room, a single session, single conference where I help people make the changes right then and there. It is an interactive thing as opposed to just presentation, where we're going to sort of take you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but also help you address your individual questions, problems, challenges, goals, whatever it might be, because a lot of times you can't, if you're in a room with 2,000 people watching a presenter, you can't ask that person a question. If you take an online course, you spend the money and you download all the videos, they're telling you what they want to tell you. You can't ask a course a question. And this, for me, while it may not be the most scalable thing in the world, it's the way that I feel that I can best help people on a one-on-one basis.
And what do you find is the greatest fear that's keeping people back, or that in doing
Fear. It just overall, the fear comes in many different forms. Fear might be the fear of rejection, the fear of failure. I don't know what I'm doing. I get this a lot. And part of the reason why I did it was going through this journey on my own. I would have these ideas, I would have these things, and my family, God bless them, I love them to death, but most of the time I'm working home by myself. While the cat is wonderful company, he doesn't necessarily give a lot of great feedback. So feeling isolated and alone is very scary. And you might go to a Facebook group, you might buy this course, but you need not just support, but you need accountability as well too. So, like for example, and this is not meant to sound like a plug, but just to explain, like when my workshop weekend is over, there's ongoing support and ongoing accountability. So you don't leave all excited, and then there's that huge gap between the event and then you continuing on. So you do need a support system around you, because even if you are a solopreneur doing it alone, you have to have that encouragement, that support, the accountability that you might not be able to get at home by yourself.
Yeah, and I think so. Anyone who's followed my work or seen my work knows I'm not just doing an infomercial here. I'm not. I will put the information for your workshop and your website with this video, but I bring it up because it struck me in looking at it and just kind of looking at some of the video that it was more sincere, that this wasn't, one of those things where you're going to walk out with a notebook and 10 years later go, I didn't do a thing. So that's why I bring it up. And that's the only times I bring those up. So I want to ask a few more questions. I want to be really respectful of your time. This has been a great conversation. I want to have some fun. So I want to ask you first, your favorite, now this is tough. If somebody asked me, I don't know if I could do it. Your favorite park?
I'm a nostalgic at heart. I still love Magic Kingdom. There's still something unique and special about that place.
Okay. Your favorite character?
Peter Pan.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me about that one.
Listen, I can give you top 10 reasons. Look, he never has to grow up. He lives on this beautiful island, like hanging out with his friends. All the mermaids love him. He gets to fight pirates and wins. Oh, by the way, he can fly. Other than the green leotards, he's pretty much the perfect character.
Okay. All right. Favorite ride?
I do love Peter Pan's flight. There is something, again, there's almost that sensation of flight that you get to that. But you know what? When I go to the parks, I don't ride necessarily a lot. There's something about the People Mover in Magic Kingdom, just that leisurely tour. I love people watching from that vantage point.
And what's interesting, it's like how long, you good?
People Mover sign. Yeah, I got my People Mover sign. So.
What's funny is, I was given a thumbs up for the People Mover because I love riding it, especially on a hot July day. It's like you take the kids and you're like, can we just go around 10 times? And it was funny one time they'd been having a lot of trouble getting that thing back up and running. It's like, you would think, is this thing like Rise of the Resistance? It's like, it just goes around. What's going on? But anyways, I remember it breaking down one time, and they took us off and walked us through the back, and that is exciting, right? It's like, oh, a mop! Look, a mop! There's a mop! That's a Disney mop! Take a picture of that. Okay, so that's favorite ride. Now, on one of your videos, I heard you say a tongue-in-cheek cheat phrase. You said Disney attractions are things to do in between eating at the parks. I love that. Love it. What's your favorite thing to eat from a Disney menu?
Oh gosh. So I love, this is the favorite child question. You know what? Like, I love certain specific restaurants, and whether it's for the cuisine or the location, but I still think I'll give you the simple, albeit lame answer. Grabbing a bucket of popcorn and just sitting on Main Street and watching people go by.
That's not a lame answer to me. I get it. I absolutely get it. I think I told you I did a post earlier today, and it was from a moment I had at Magic Kingdom many years ago when my daughter was really little, and I remember sitting on a bench. It was near the Country Bear Jamboree. Boy, if anyone's listening to this, or they're going to think we're totally nerds, but which we are. But anyways, and I just remember, and then it happened again on this recent trip with my wife at Merchant of Venus. Is that what it's called? By Space Mountain. My wife and I were sitting on one of those hot metallic benches, which is like, where did you come up with this concept? And I just thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool if Walt could see this? You know, I mean, you've seen those memorable photos of Walt sitting on a bench in Disneyland alone, and you just go, boy, I wish I could sit next to him, and he could be here, and I could go, you know, look at this.
So wait, I'll turn the tables on you, and I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you could show Walt one thing, whether it be a single attraction, a land, a movie, whatever it is, since he passed, what would it be and why?
Wow. That's a great question. You know, I'd have to say I'd have to show him Flight of Passage. You know, and I'd have to tell him my story. And I'd have to say, Walt, you know, all that stuff you did, all those times you just thought, will this ever work? You know, thank you. You know, because that love you had for your daughters, that love you had for your wife and your family, somehow it came through, and you made a 57-year-old man cry on a ride.
I have a feeling he'd be wiping away tears too.
I'm sure you're right. Well, boy, so just two more questions, and the second to last one is, you know, this is called Coincidental Conversations. Have you thought about any coincidences? We've touched on them. Are there any other coincidences that kind of come to mind of people or places or things that if they hadn't happened, you wouldn't be sitting where you are right now?
There are countless. You know, there's the old adage that everything happens for a reason. I think that's true, even if that reason does not necessarily become apparent when it happens. I will tell you that the people that have come into my life as a result of this journey are the people who I now consider my closest friends and my extended family. Again, coming full circle from somebody who didn't have a lot of friends, I now feel that one of the greatest blessings is that I have many friends, both physically close by as well as just, you know, literally from around the world. But all of those people have positively impacted my journey, whether they realize it or not, one way or the other too.
That's awesome. And last thing, so the famous quote from Walt Disney, right? I only hope we never lose sight of one thing, that it all was started by a mouse. So if we were to end that quote differently for you and your career, it all started with
this is, you know what, I love and hate to give you this answer, but it's true. Like it really all does start with, whether it's a dream, a daydream, and a single idea. You know, Walt's journey started with a single idea, right? That predates Mickey Mouse, but it does. And however small or insignificant you might think that idea might be, you never know where it's going to lead. Whether it's Walt and a character turning into the Disney company that it is today, or, you know, a silly lawyer in New Jersey that has an idea that writes a book, and you watching like that same thing, whatever sort of idea that you have, that thing that you have written down on a piece of paper that you keep coming back to, this thing that keeps gnawing at you that you want to do, you never know where that might lead. And you will only find out by starting to take those first steps.
That's well said. And ideas connect us to each other, right? And they connect us to ourselves. And boy, how many Disney, yeah, how many Disney songs and with the word dream in it, and then Once Upon a Time, and it's how you start a story, right?
Yep.
Any great storyteller. So, well, Lou, I can't tell you enough. This has been really great. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today, and thank you. Thanks for watching, and we'll have all the information about Lou, his workshops, and everything else. Now he does a lot of stuff, so that could be a very long list, but it's very well worth it. And one day I'm also going to join him. He also sponsors a running team. So my goal is to run a marathon at Disney. I don't know if I'll end up alive at the end of it, but that's the goal. So thanks for joining us, and take care. See you on the next episode. Bye.